Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be my July TBR. Now for the month of July, I will say I have rather high expectations for myself, but I feel like I'm also setting myself up for success. First off, it's my birthday month, so you know, that is fun. And two, it's also the first month in about 3 months where I'm not really doing any traveling, so I can continue to live my introvert dream and just sit in my house and enjoy a good book. And in terms of my TBR, I will say I feel like I have a rather large variety of books, some very long fantasy reads, but also some historical and literary fiction books I'm really looking forward to getting to. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first two books I'm just going to quickly mention as they are carryovers from last month. The first is embarrassing, and that is The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. I did not get to this at all in the month of June. I had grand plans to continue to listen to the audiobook and just did not. I failed a little bit here, but I want to get back into my Legend of Zelda playing in the month of July, and I want to get back into this audiobook. So this is for sure on my TBR. I will be making progress. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish it, but I do feel like I'll be able to get a decent amount of the way through. I'm looking forward to this. I hear a lot of people say that this is a turning point for them for this series, and I am still kind of consistently looking for the big hook when it comes to the Wheel of Time. I like the story. I like the characters I'm drawn in, but I wouldn't say it's like something I can't put down, if you know what I mean. But nonetheless, I do hope to get further into this fourth book, and this is the first book on my July TBR. Next up is The Hunger of Gods by John Gwynne. Again, another book I started in the month of June, but just wasn't able to complete. I only read about 150 pages of this book, and this is the second book to John Gwynne's like Norse Viking inspired fantasy series. I read book one right when it came out last year and really liked it. So obviously I'm really looking forward to completing book two. So far, I am really liking it, and it also had an incredible recap at the beginning of this book, which I definitely needed. This series is set in a land where the gods used to rule, but they have since perished. But people can kind of collect tokens of the gods, bones, and other items to kind of up their own fighting powers. There's also people who have the blood of the gods, which have some type of magical ability. This is a multi-POV tale following a variety of characters kind of going on their own individual quests, either for vengeance, glory, or in hopes of saving the ones that they love. It's really intriguing. It's very dark, very, very vibey. And I feel like once I finish this, I'm gonna want to watch like The Northman or something. But nonetheless, I really want to complete this as well for the month of July. Next up, I have two very vibey fantasy stories, two books with a lot of atmosphere, and I'm just hoping I will fall in love with. First is The Buried Giant by Kazu Ishiguro. I have read a book by him last year, really, really loved his writing style, just his concepts. And this is actually kind of like a fantasy folklore, Arthurian kind of vibing story, which I feel like I could really, really love. And we're basically following two elderly characters who have decided to set out on a journey themselves across the land, in hopes of finding the son they have not seen for years. And along their quest, they know they're going to run into many different hazards and obstacles that they have to overcome, but it is said that this journey will help reveal the darkened corners of the love that they have for each other. I love classic quest stories in fantasy, and even if this is just truly that, there is no twist, I personally would not mind at all. I feel like the writing is going to be incredible. I want it to be very atmospheric and just reference a very comfortable and interesting kind of baseline, which is kind of what I'm hoping with this particular story. Next up might actually be the oldest book on my TBR on my bookshelf. I've had this book for probably about 8 years unread, but it's also a book that every time I look at it, I'm like, ah, yes, when I get to that, I feel like I'm going to love it. And it finally feels like the right time to pick it up, and that is Deathless by Catherine M. Valente. I am no stranger to Catherine M. Valente's writing. Particularly, I love her middle grade series, The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland. I already know she has a very rich and beautiful writing style, and I feel like that is really going to shine in this as well. And this essentially is a story that centers Catherine M. Valente's perspective of Koishi the Deathless, and this particular figure in folklore is to Eastern history as like the devil or witches are to Western history. And it is also said concept that the author modernizes his tale, kind of setting this figure within an era of great change in Russia. Specifically, we're going to be following modernization, revolution, and items like that. I really love Russian history. I also really love folklore reimaginings. I love Catherine M. Valente's writing, and I feel like this is going to be a really interesting reimagining of a well-known figure. So I'm looking forward to picking this up. I'm hoping I love it, but we shall see. The next book on my TBR is a bit of a spoiler for my upcoming book haul, but I finally just decided to check this book out. I have gotten many comments recommending this book to me, telling me that this is like the perfect steamy fantasy read, so I thought to myself, you know what? Let's give it a try, and that is Guild by Raven Kennedy. This is a super popular fantasy romance book that I see all over the place, from booktube to book talk, and I'm just curious to see how I'm gonna feel about it myself. I personally really enjoy a steamy fantasy book every once in a while, and I've also heard that this plot is apparently very good as well, which is a total bonus. The synopsis of this book is incredibly brief on the back. It just says gold. Gold floors, gold walls, gold furniture, gold clothes. In King Midas's castle built at the top of the frozen mountains, everything is made of gold, even me. And this is said to be a reimagining of the myth surrounding King Midas, told through the perspective of a woman he has gold touched. It doesn't really say much more than that. It sounds pretty interesting. Again, I love adult fantasy stories. I love a lot of romance, so we shall see. I have pretty high expectations. I'm also looking forward to filming a reading vlog for this one. Next, I have some literary fiction choices for this month. First is Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. This won the National Book Award, and the synopsis of this just honestly sold me right away. Essentially, it says that our main character, Willis Wu, does not really view himself as the main protagonist in his own life. He views himself as kind of a side, generic Asian male character, kind of existing in the background to whatever major action is actually taking place on screen. Every day, he leaves his small room and goes to his job, the Golden Palace, where a cop show is in perpetual production at. He is a bit player here too, but he dreams of becoming the kung fu guy, which he perceives as the most respectable and lauded role that someone who looks like him can get. Or is it? After stumbling into the spotlight, Willis finds himself launched into a world wider than he's ever known, discovering not only the secret history of Chinatown, but also the buried legacy of his own family. Infinitely inventive, deeply personal, exploring things of pop culture, assimilation, and immigration, Interior Chinatown is Charles Yu's most moving, daring, and masterful novel yet. Outside of that incredible synopsis, structurally this book is apparently written like a screenplay, which just seems so unique, but this is a story I feel like I'm going to really love, and I thought I would add it to my TBR for the month. Next book shouldn't be too much of a surprise, and that is The Story of a New Name by Elena Ferrante. This is book 2 to the Neapolitan novels. I read the first book, My Brilliant Friend, earlier this summer and absolutely fell in love with it. From the writing style to the story, I was engrossed. It was emotional, and just like the anticipation I have picking up book 2 is so high, but I just know Elena Ferrante is going to deliver, and it's going to make me feel things and also make me think. And in the Neapolitan series, we are essentially following our two main characters, Elena and Lila. They are best friends, they are confidants, they grew up with each other in the 1950s in Naples, and in the first one, we're primarily following their childhood up through high school. In book 2, we start out a new chapter, a new era of their life, let's call it, but we're continuing to follow not only their lives, but also how they are intricately connected to one another. I truly just so appreciated how dynamic Elena Ferrante wrote this particular female friendship. There are so many different layers to it, love to jealousy to frustration. You follow, at least in the first one, these two young girls coming to age in a world where there are a lot of limitations placed on them based on where they live, who they are, how much money they have. And so much of their story is also a larger reflection, not only on Naples, the town they live in, but honestly the world itself. The first one was so moving. I can't wait to see where their lives go next. I'm rooting for them, I'm scared for them, and I care about them so much. Next book is another recent pickup, but honestly, ever since I've come across it, I knew I wanted to read it as soon as possible, and that is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This is a speculative fiction story, and just the synopsis of it just sounds so interesting. This book is set in 1950s in America, in a world that is exactly like our own, except for one significant event that occurred. And that is one night, a group of women were transformed into dragons. They grew wings, they grew scales, and they left a fiery path of destruction before departing to the skies. This book is about that event, but also about the women who were left behind. We follow a main character whose aunt transformed into a dragon. She's dealing not only with the resentment of why her aunt was chosen and not her mother, but also the fallout of society kind of viewing women now more suspiciously due to this one triggering event. Obviously, the synopsis of this story is very strange, a group of women turning into dragons, but obviously I feel like that is going to be a stand-in for some larger social commentary. I'm very curious about this book. I already know I love Kelly Barnhill's writing, and I'm hoping this is a knockout. The next book on my TBR is Son of Shadows by Juliette Marillier. I read The Daughter of the Forest again earlier this summer and truly fell in love with it. From the writing style to the forest settings to our main characters to the classic quest structure, it was emotional and dark and daring, and I was so connected to it. So obviously I picked up additional books within this series knowing I wanted to read them very soon, so here we are with book 2. I'm so excited to re-encounter Juliette Marillier's beautiful writing, and I believe this is actually following a new main character and a new quest. Specifically, this follows the daughter of our main character from Daughter of the Forest. I love that each book, while connected, is still very much contained into itself, which I honestly enjoy from a story arc point of view. But nonetheless, I'm so excited to continue my Juliette Marillier journey. Next is a book I mentioned in my mid-year freakout book tag, and honestly I'm a little shocked I have not picked it up yet, and that is The Last Arguments of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. I need to read this book. I'm so fearful I'm going to begin to forget details from the first 2 books, which I read so close together and loved so much. But this is the third book to a grimdark fantasy trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, wherein which we follow a variety of characters from a very diverse background, all of which are very gray morality. For example, as I always say, my favorite character literally tortures people for a living, but they slowly become connected in a really fascinating of ways. The first book is really mostly introducing us to the characters, while the second book is really introducing us to the plot, and the third book I think is really gonna bring everything together, and I'm so excited to see how this story is going to wrap up. I'm also excited to be able to continue on with some of his later series that are still kind of existing within this world. So all that to say is I need to finish this trilogy. The last book that's on my TBR is a cozy reading option, which I always enjoy having, and that is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Marensala. This is a cozy mystery story. Literally add cozy in front of any genre and I am interested. Cozy fantasy, cozy contemporary, cozy mystery. They're fun, delightful, and low stakes. They're easy to read. They make me happy. I love them so much. And this follows our main character Lila, and she has just recently moved back home after a very terrible breakup. And it seems that her life is kind of following every stereotypical rom-com trope. She's helping her aunt kind of save her failing restaurant, and she's also dealing with all of her pesky aunties, both providing their love and judgment and trying to set her up. However, when a notoriously nasty food critic, who also happens to be our main character's ex-boyfriend, drops dead after a confrontation with our main character Lila, her life shifts from fun rom-com to a Christie novel real quick. And now Lila finds herself in the midst of an investigation, and she must take it upon herself to try to solve what really happened, not only to protect herself, but also her family and her family's restaurant. Again, cozy mystery, say no more. I love Agatha Christie novels actually so much. I love a whodunit, and I feel like this is a perfect kind of lower stakes, less scary, but still has the thriller and mystery component that I always enjoy picking up. Alrighty guys, those are all the books I hope to pick up in the month of July. Let me know down below some books you hope to get to, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!